So today's guest is Irish writer and director David Merriman. David recently co-wrote and co-directed Recreation alongside the legendary Jim Sheridan, a fictional courtroom drama inspired by the unresolved murder of Sophie Toscan de Plantier. The film premiered at Tribeca and brought David into collaboration with some of Ireland's most recognisable filmmaking talents. Today we're talking about how he found his route into film and how that collaboration came about. So, Dave, tell me, for people who are just discovering you through Recreation, what was your route into filmmaking?
Well, I made my first feature 10 years ago, which is actually a doc feature, a little over 10 years ago. And I'd been in the entertainment business and the music business before that. And I was doing a kind of foundational year at Maynooth to become a psychotherapist, if you could believe that. And we had a project where you could have an option to do anything you wanted on grief. So you could do any project. So I decided to make like a little short film about my band. And I've always been obsessed with movies. I've always been obsessed, particularly in the golden era of TV. And just since I was a kid, I love books and reading and stories and storytelling. It's always been something inherent that I've always done, just as something I love to do, not necessarily thinking about a career, because as I said, I was a musician. And when I made that short film, I realized, like, well, this is definitely what I want to do. So I started getting serious about my writing and making short films. And eventually I was inspired to make a documentary. And then I had a really nice guitar. It's the only nice guitar I ever had, a Taylor guitar. And I sold it and bought a couple of old DSLRs and a couple of lav mics. And I went and made this documentary. And then it kind of, it did okay, got some attention, which was nice. And kind of validated me a little bit, and I was able to then use that to go on and do different things. But it was I spent a long time writing movies. Uh, Probably in 2012 is when I kind of started, and I would say probably in the last 2 years, 3 years is when I feel like I figured it out, and a lot in large part, to be honest with you, in writing, a couple of films with Jim Sheridan, and that really, really kind of, helped me understand what I was doing wrong. I think there's a lot of obvious things we all do wrong.
Yeah.
But that was kind of it. I did the doc like 11 years ago, the feature, and sent it to a festival in America and won an award, and then uh, did a little tour around with it to different colleges and stuff like that. And then yeah, just started making music videos and shorts and doing terrible stuff, as you have to, like, to get to the good stuff. And that's kind of how I ended up getting my foot in there into the idea of creatively making films. And anyway,
So is it over those last few years then that filmmaking has become something that you want to build a career around, or would that be?
well, honestly, in 2012 when I made that short film, I knew, like, this is definitely what I want to do. And as I said, it was kind of when I was a kid, my parents were Jehovah's Witnesses, so sometimes we wouldn't have a TV in the house. But my brother took me to see Star Wars, E.T., Brides of Dracula, and Jaws at our school during the summer. And I was obsessed with those movies. And honestly, they've shaped my movie taste ever since. And it's always just been something. I was one of those people. We had a music school in town I taught in Dublin, and I was just constantly going to the movies all of the time. I've always been obsessed with films. I've always been obsessed with storytelling. Like I said, I used to try and write novels and different things. So it was just like, but music was the thing. Music was my thing. I got really into music at an early age when I was 15, and that was my kind of career that I thought I would do. But I always loved the storytelling, so it was just kind of hovering in the background. And then when I made that short film, it was the first time I'd ever made anything, and I made it from a collection of footage that we had shot with the band, and then stock footage, and I had like a little narrative. It was only like 2 minutes long. But it was then I knew, like, well, this is what I want to do, and so I started trying to work toward it then. But kind of, in a weird way, I've always thought of creativity not in financial terms. I've always thought about it in terms of, like, I want to do something really good, and I want to do something I'll be proud of, and I'm terrified I'm going to do something shit, and so and that drove me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's how that first doc called "The State of Being Human" came about. Just this dreaded fear that somebody would put it on and think it was just atrocious, and it's not. But it's very early, when you look at it now. Like, I don't know anything about framing, you know.
Yeah.
So it's very. And I'd stick people beside a window. I had no lighting in the documentary at all. But I got it done. You know what I mean? I got it done, and it's there and it works, and it was my first step. But no, it was certainly 2012. That's what kind of sparked me. This is what I want to do.
So with that first feature doc, then, um, how did you find that? Now you're talking back in 2012 when it was
Yeah,
a completely different landscape for
yeah, yeah.
distribution and everything. Like if you get
Yes.
into Extravision or Chartbusters, it was a bit
Yeah,
different.
yeah,
Like how
yeah.
how have you, I suppose, found the evolution from there with
Mm.
getting your films into the audiences?
Yeah, well, it's obviously completely different now, streaming has become, obviously the main platform which people, absorb their entertainment. And then of course I met, I suppose really everything started to come into focus when I met Jim Sheridan probably 5, 6 years ago, and start working with him 5 years ago. Uh, and we just worked together all the time. It was like the greatest film school I could have had, from a storytelling point of view, from a writing point of view, editing, working with actors, understanding what acting is, and then sort of then the business side of it as well. Which of course, what's happened to the film business, what happened to the music business when I was in it, it's been completely destroyed. I mean, Netflix are essentially Napster at this point. You know what I mean? Everything is devalued. There's less money, and I really like the idea of your podcast, because my idea has always been just make the fucking thing, no matter what happens. So in the last year or so, myself and John Connors had made 4 movies. I directed one, he directed one, and then 2 other people directed them. We ran this film course called Lights, Camera, Action, and that's been hugely satisfying to work with people who never made a movie before and have like a little theater group where we work for 3 months with them and then make a movie at the end of it. And so the idea now is to get that into distribution channels. With 4 films, I'm about to shoot a 5th in August. Get them into the distribution channels, get them, a release in Ireland, which I think is, probably the simplest way, or the simplest avenue. And then it's about getting them out there, and trying to get them into a good festival, or to a sales agent that will get them into a good festival. But it's very competitive, as you know yourself. It's hard to break through.
Yeah.
The fact that Recreation was kind of critically acclaimed has opened some doors for me, which is good, and enabled me to make some really good contacts. And yeah, so that's it. But the business is it's a business in decline.
Yeah, and it's funny. I talk about this a lot. When we made Don't Sell Me a Dog, our first feature film, that was exactly why we made it, because we were getting nowhere,
Yeah,
and we were
yeah,
always told short films are your key. They're the launch pad,
yeah,
and
yeah,
but
yeah.
with technology evolving so quickly, anyone can make a feature. It's
Absolutely,
get up off your backside and do it, and
absolutely.
and it doesn't matter how bad it is. I like you were saying about looking back at early stuff. I look back at
Mm,
Dog, and I'm like,
mm,
Christ, what
mm.
was I doing? Like, but at the same time, I always tell the story that got up on Apple TV, and we were
Yeah,
delighted with that, and that
yeah,
got us attention. But definitely, and I love the idea of what yourself and John are doing, taking good people in and making a film at the end of the process. So let's talk about Jim for a minute. Um,
mm,
there's a huge difference between networking with the likes of me and you and John and these
mm.
small little people, and then suddenly you're networking with Jim Sheridan. And how
Yeah,
how, how do you build that relationship from just going, "How are you, Jim? I'm Dave."
yeah. Well, what happened was, during COVID, Aslan, who I'd just done a music video for, and Chris Dignam, who I'd known since I was 15 and I was very close with, and he had been the thing that inspired me to be a musician. He'd taken singing lessons with my uncle, and when I came over, I'd been living in America. My folks had immigrated in the 80s, and I moved over to America, and then I moved back in 1990, and I ended up meeting Christy and being exposed to him. He wasn't in Aslan at that point; he was in Dignam and Goff, and that's what made me want to be a musician. So anyway, first gig I ever seen is in the Olympia. So during COVID, Aslan, didn't have a ton of money to make content, and everybody was trying to stay, kind of relevant, and so I helped them make some music videos, piece together between different things they had, and we'd been in the middle of shooting a music video for them I was directing before COVID happened. And so after COVID, they were doing the annual Rock Against Homelessness gig they do in the Olympia every year, but this time it was going to be a streaming on Virgin Media. And they were asked did they have any idea who they'd like to direct it, because they were the lead band on it, and they said, well, we should get David to direct it. And of course I bullshit and said, yeah, I could do that. I hadn't a fucking clue what I was doing. Don't know if you can curse on here, but I hadn't a clue, but I worked it out. I got, had a big plan. We ended up with 6 cameras and jib. And so I pulled in some contacts. I knew Panty, Rory O'Neill, and some other people in America that I work with who got us Wyvern and Lingo, and got us, oh God, I can't remember them now, Spanish guitar playing band. Anyway, they're really big. They won a Grammy, and a couple other people. And Jim was going to be interviewed by Panty. And at the time, the guy who runs Rock and Hopes is a guy named Barry Egan. And I guess he didn't really trust me that much, so he asked Jim to look over my production plan. And so myself and Jim started emailing each other, and then we met and we got on like a house on fire. We're both from working class backgrounds. Um, I've been in the entertainment business a long time, so I grew up around people like Sinead O'Connor and Christy Dignam. These were my friends. And so I've never been particularly impressed with celebrity in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And so me and him just got on great. And so we started, he had agreed to help us promote Rock Against Homelessness, because, of course, Jim's name would carry a lot more weight than mine. And so I was bringing him to RTE in different places, and we just sit around talk about movies. We go for breakfast afterwards or whatever, and we just talk about films and storytelling. It's something he loves and I love, and we really, really got on. And then turned out that he had shot a Neil Young gig in the 90s where Pearl Jam were playing with Neil Young. It was the Mirrorball album, and Jim was going to make it into a doc, and he asked me if I would direct it, and he would produce it. And so we start working on that, and that evolved into something else, and so that's how we made Recreation together. And then we've written another movie called Kerry Babies, which is going to be made. Jim's directing as well, which I'm really proud of that script as well. And so it really was just a case of getting on with them and being like, buddies, and obviously I like to believe he's seen something in me, and he kind of just encouraged me and helped me to grow that. And he'd be very hard on me as well sometimes. Shit. He literally said that to me. We were writing it. You all want cliche shit. But it's true, you reach for the cliche first. And so that was kind of how it happened, and we just became friends. And like I said, there's not that many working class directors in the film business. A lot of, you know, or in any area of the film business, it
Mhm.
tends not to be working class people. And so I think there was an element of that. And like I said, we just liked each other and became friends, and it kind of grew from there.
Cool, cool. So when you get onto the set of Recreation then, and leading up to it,
Mm,
how did you
yeah.
divide responsibility? And that question then leads on to the obvious one. How
Yeah.
did you handle creative disagreements?
Well, look, Jim Sheridan made In the Name of the Father, My Left Foot, In America,
Yeah.
The Boxer. He's made amazing films. He's been nominated for 6 Academy Awards. I think it's a disgrace he hasn't won any of those. Jim was my mentor, uh, and but we had and have to this day a very similar way of thinking about things. Jim is an amazing collaborator. The fact that he has got 6 Academy Awards or nominations doesn't make him believe he's always right. And he's one of the amazing things about him is he will say to anybody, "What do you think?" And then he's taught me this. You can get an idea from anybody. You really can. And we're different in lots of ways. But I think he loved the fact that I had a lot of energy and drive, and we collaborated really well together. And we were really in it together. You know, we fought with the producer in Luxembourg. We don't speak to him. We haven't spoken to him since before we shot the movie. He's a fucking idiot. But that's neither here nor there. And as a result, it was like a war. We were in a war. You know, I think making a movie is like being in a war
Yeah.
a lot of times. And it was me and him. We felt in Luxembourg against a lot of people, not the actors.
Yeah.
And we were in the bunker, and we just work well together. Honestly, we do. We don't. I'm not gonna say we've never had arguments. Of course, we have, but
Mm.
you argue about the thing, not about the ego. Do you know what I mean? So if it's
Yeah.
about the idea, then that's where it's at. You know what I mean? So he was going to be in the movie, and so obviously he needed somebody behind the camera, and so and he was, Jim loves working with the actors. He loves it, and that's his favorite part. And there's a lot of parts of filmmaking that I don't think he loves that much because they're kind of bullshitty. Well, not bullshitty, but they're
Yeah.
administrative parts, do you know what I mean? That are just a pain in the hole, And so I think he was happy to let me kind of run with a lot of those, and I have a lot of drive, and I'm very obsessive. Um, and so yeah, that's we never really had a discussion about how we would divide things. We just did it, And then if we disagreed, then we did, and we didn't get into shouting matches or anything like that. We would have yeah, we would just choose what was best for the idea and be very open to each other. Do you know what I mean? I think that's a big part of collaborating is being very open to the other person and open to the idea that you can be wrong. I think in my earlier part of my career as a musician, my ego was driving me so much. I was unable to collaborate with other people when I really should have been. And then now, as I've gotten older, obviously now I like to believe I've gotten better at that, and I think that served me then when he and I were working together.
Yeah, and collaboration is key on set. I
Definitely.
think it was Ferdy McAnna said to me early on, he said, Park, you'll have 20 ideas, but
Yeah,
someone will give you the 21st idea and it'll probably be a killer idea.
absolutely.
You know,
100%.
so
Filmmaking is collaborative. It
yeah,
absolutely is. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you really have to leave your ego at home, and particularly as a director, because you're not on set as much as the other HODs,
Hmm.
so they have a lot more experience with running little bits and bobs of the set. It's
Yeah, and I think there's a value to that, but I also think that, from a crew point of view, that creates a lot of problems because a lot of cameramen think they should be directors. And my attitude is if you were a director, you'd be a director. That's what you're a cameraman. That's why you're not a director. And a lot of HODs as well think because they've been on set that they know better. And I don't really subscribe to that. I think that directing is a very nebulous thing. And I think a director's job is the overall vision of the story, and the HOD's job is to help you realize that. And if you can find people that you work really well with, then that's wonderful. But you're gonna run into people who are just people who are lazy, and they just want to do just enough to get by. Then you're gonna run into people who got an attitude problem, like I said, because they either don't believe in what you're doing, or there's a really great doc about movies that made us, the Aliens version. Have you ever seen that? And the whole crew turned on James Cameron because nobody had seen Terminator because it wasn't out there. And James Cameron notoriously and it was difficult in his earlier years, but they literally walked off the set. Sigourney Weaver had to talk to him into coming back. I mean, James Cameron, that is a fucking unbelievable film, Aliens. But they didn't believe in what he was doing. George Lucas famously had all of this static with the DOP on A New Hope. You know, so I think as a director it's a fine line between being able to collaborate and then just say, no, I want it like this and that's it. Do you know what I mean? And I have zero issue in saying that to anybody because ultimately my name will be on the film. Theirs won't. Nobody turns around and goes, that film was shit. Let's blame the gaffer. That film was shit. Let's blame do you know what I mean? Like I
yeah,
remember very clearly when the night before recreation, so we had done some Zooms interviews with Americans, and we could tell by the reaction to the movie that people really liked the film. And one of the things, obviously, I always worry about is like, are people going to like the film? And myself and John Connors were staying in an Airbnb in New Jersey. We'd gone over for a couple of weeks when we were going to Tribeca. And I knew John was going to be really well reviewed because it was his best performance at that point to date. But I didn't know whether people were going to like the movie. And I remember the day, like Variety, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, all these big things were giving us rave reviews, and just this wave of relief. Now, walking along the road in New Jersey with my arm over John, and the two of us just being so happy. But, you know, if the film had sucked and people didn't like it, and it's gotten a greater reaction in America than it has here, which I find really funny. Some frustrated film student, the Irish Times gave us a bad review, just fucking completely ironic. But having said that, it's mostly got good reviews here as well. Um, but in America, it was really, really accepted, and I remember that sense of relief. But I remember thinking, people are going to love John in it. They'll love Jim because he's really good in acting in it, and they're going to love Vicky Krieps because she's really good. But if they don't like the movie, it's you they blame. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know. So I think it is a marrying of finding the right people you can work with. I work with a DP called Barra Vernon for about 5 years now, and he's fantastic, and I love him as a person. He's a great guy. When we fight like cats and dogs on set, we have a real but it's always about the idea. And if Barrett is right, then he's right, and if I'm right, then I'm right, and I'm more often right than wrong. Isn't that right, Barrett? But and he can never admit when he's wrong, so I love rubbing it in his face. But we have a great personal relationship. But that arguments, as acrimonious and heightened as they can get, are never personal. It's always about the film. And then afterwards, we're like totally cool with each other. You know what I mean? And then other times, you know, I've had people where, um, you know, crew members that, you know, I wanted to fire on day one because they were assholes, but you couldn't. So, you know, I had to growl at them a little bit, and that got them in line, you know. And then there's other people you work with, you meet them, you're like, man, I want to work with this person forever. So I think there is a thing about, you know, you're right, they do have a lot of experience,
Mm.
but lots of times they're there, they don't believe in your project the way you do. You're gonna believe in your project the way you,
Yeah.
and you have to fucking care about it more than anybody else, you know. And the other thing as well is, and this is one of the big misunderstandings about creativity, in my opinion. You were just talking about, you look at your old film and you think creativity is literally evolution. Every idea, no idea ever started perfectly formed, right? So you get the idea, then you start working on it, massaging it, you write it, and you rehearse it, you shoot it, and then in edit, you rewrite the fucking thing again. Do you know what I mean? So, and then you have to sometimes go and reshoot. I'm a big fan of reshooting. Do you know what I mean? It's all about perspective and seeing what works and see what people react to. I think a lot of times with crew members, they think, oh, we like this, we set it up, and then we shoot it. It's like, well, if it doesn't feel truthful when I look through the camera, then it doesn't matter how pretty the image is. That's not the issue. You know, how many times you turn on a movie that looks amazing and you're 5 minutes into it, you couldn't give a fuck and you turn it off. All of the time. Movies are about character. They're about people caring about the humans that are in it, and the way that happens is that there's an emotional truth to the story, and it feels real, and that is way beyond lighting and anything else. I think that's something that you have to inherently capture, and the actor portrays. And so those are the most important things, you know. And so sometimes the camera will say, "Well, I need a day to shoot something." Well, we don't have a day to shoot it. Well, I need it. It's like, well, you can have to shoot it in half a day, and it's not going to look as pretty as you want. But if it's truthful, then the movie will work, and that's all anybody's ever going to care about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you're bang on. Everyone has to be on the same page, and I agree with you. I'm a fan of reshoots as well, and we did a lot of them on Don't Sell Me a Dog. Um, with the Bigfoot movie, I didn't have that opportunity, and I wish
Right.
I had.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
but definitely on Don't Sell Me a Dog, we went back and reshot loads of stuff
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
did loads of pickups, and it did bring the movie on.
Of
Um,
course.
so that you said when you started working with Jim and you
Mm.
got the best film school ever. You
Yeah.
mentioned that he pointed out a lot of mistakes that you were
Oh yeah.
making, but
Oh yeah.
you said it was mistakes everyone makes, and I have a feeling I know what a lot of them are. But what were the ones that maybe
Well, I think
surprised
one.
you?
I think one of the things that we tend to reach for is cliche, and I want to be careful about using that word because everything's already been done. But it's about the context in which you do something that makes it work, right? So, you know, from a writing point of view, it could be being too on the nose with your dialogue, you know, um, and character is about action and intention, what a person does. Also, acting is an internal. thing. It's about what somebody thinks, not about what they say. You've heard me say this before, but it is. Do you know what I mean? And lots of times, actors. So it's a collaboration between the audience and the filmmaker, right? You want to give them just enough information so they feel like they're participating in the storytelling, and they understand and they feel what's going on. And if you give them too much information, it's expositional and it feels like, oh God, you know? And then the same thing's for acting. So overacting is basically exposition for acting. Do you know what I mean? You're telling the audience how to feel. They don't want to be told how to feel. They want to feel it. And the only way for them to feel it is for you to feel it. And I think the energy from behind the camera is just as important as the energy in front of the camera. And that collaboration between the writing and the acting. Francis Ford Coppola says that good writing and good acting are the hydrogen and oxygen of filmmaking. If you have both, you have a good film. So the image could be shitty, but if you have those aspects, you can have a good picture. And I think, to me, the emotional truth of the story, the emotional truth of performance are the most important things. And I really learned about those with him. I remember him saying to actors, it just feels like a scene. I say it all the time now as well, you know, but you know what he means, you know, and then it's about, well, how do I get the actor to where they need to be? Do you know what I mean? Because your job is to try and get the actor to do the best that they can. And I think that's really about the atmosphere that you create in the conversations that you
Yeah.
have, rather than being prescriptive a lot of times. But I think that was it. It just, what is emotional truth? Do you know what I mean? What is the thing that makes you feel this is real? And I think a lot of times for good art, that's about drawing on your own personal experience, not necessarily creating a biography of what you've done. But find things that are true to you and that you understand emotionally, and put them in your film. You know, if it's about grief, what do you know about grief? You know, write what you know, they say. That's not what you like. You could write a movie about space if it's emotionally about what you know. That's what counts, you know, I think. So I think those were the things to just to avoid the cliche, and just be emotionally truthful in your writing, and truthful in the performance of it. You know, sometimes when we would write, he would play a part and I would play a part, and we'd record it, and then we would transcribe it, and then we would cut it out, and we would have a scene. And other times we wouldn't write like that. I would write a scene and send it to him, and he'd write it and we'd send it back, or we could be sitting in the same room doing that. And sometimes he could be in another country and be doing that. But I think it's really, you know, just a cliche. You know, we all kind of reach for what's convenient, but I think it's about finding what's truthful, which is harder to get your head into that space. But once you do, I think, and once you understand the character, and that's where I think probably going to so much therapy all my life has kind of helped me to understand my own psychology, which sometimes helps me to understand other people's psychology. So I think it's really about that, you know. It's you just have to see it like a rock, and you're going to turn it into something. And a week after molding it, it looks like something. And 2 weeks and 3 weeks and 6 months, it looks nothing like the rock that it started with. You know, it's a sculpture. But that takes a long time a lot of times, because it's about trial and error and figuring out what works. And it's not, you know, despite what people think, there's not a science to this. There is a structure to storytelling, and you can ignore it if you want to and embrace it if you want to. But I do believe there is a structure. But I think that if you're just if you think, oh, I'm gonna shot list it, I've written it, I've gone in, I'm gonna shoot this, and it's gonna be great. I'd say 99 times out of 100, that's bullshit. I seen a thing the other day. Have you seen The Odyssey?
Not yet, no.
I really enjoyed it. I really, and I'm not like a Christopher Nolan fan, but I loved it. I love Interstellar, but I love The Odyssey. And I seen this interview with Matt Damon talking about, he asked Christopher Nolan, they had this giant Trojan horse. He's like, they were going to pull it to the city, and they actually did. And he said, how are you going to shoot that? And he says, I haven't a clue. And I just love that, you know, because I like the plan, but the plan can always change. That's what pisses crews off. Do you know what I mean? But you have to go in the room and see what works. Do you know what I mean? And what feels truthful. Um, and I think that's all the way through the process as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of stuff of the behind the scenes of the Odyssey, and what Nolan does is mad. Like, but you definitely have to create that fun atmosphere on set as the director to make everyone feel comfortable and be in a safe
Mm,
place, particularly your cast.
Yeah.
Now that you're working with new and upcoming filmmakers, are they making the same mistakes? Are they
Uh, well,
commonalities among them?
myself and John have been mentoring a director named Kirsty Fogarty for the last year. She's really a special talent, in my opinion. She's gone on and made a couple of shorts, and last short she made has just won tons of awards all over. She really gets storytelling, really gets acting, and that's really rewarding to see. A ton of people out of the film course have gone on to do different things, one, be in different movies. Two of them are in Lemonade, the new Barry Keoghan movie. One of them's in Lost City with Stephen Rea and John Connors. And then we've other people in. One of them got offered a place in Peaky Blinders. A lot of the folks in the short that Kirsty made come from our course. Some of them have won acting awards. Amanda Merridan, one of the actors. So, and then the young filmmaker of the award of the year was a guy named Liam Raymond. He was in the course as well. So it's like all of the time we're seeing these people, growing from it, which is really rewarding to see because, we start doing it last March, and to see people, getting somewhere and doing something with their career is wonderful, and to be a little part of that is wonderful, to encourage them and to help them. So definitely that I love that, and I love actors. I love working with actors. It's my favorite thing. They're all nuts, but I think everybody who's an artist is nuts to one degree or another, and so they're my people.
Yeah, you do have to be a little bit mad, all right, to be in this industry.
Definitely,
Um,
definitely.
so, well, I suppose looking at those first time filmmakers you're working with,
Mm.
what what's shit, I've lost it now. It's gone. Oh yeah.
I'll come back to you, Park.
Yeah, no, I have it. Just had a moment there, a senior moment, as to say. What, what do emerging filmmakers misunderstand about approaching established directors and producers?
Well, I think what most people in the film business misunderstand is what the creative process actually is, which is an evolution of an idea. And that the idea that, you go in and you shot list, or you have this perfect plan and you go in and shoot it and that's a movie. It's like, it is a process, and you have to love the process as well. That's the other thing, is that if you can love the process as you're doing it, I feel you're going to make something good. Do you know what I mean? Like, if that is your intention, is just to go and shoot and have fun and make something that you think is important or cool, then somebody else will think it's important and cool. And I think that lots of people also feel that there's like a door, and like through this door is success, and through this door is, like a whole host of people who are making movies and this and that. And of course, nepotism takes place in every aspect of everything throughout the world, not just the film business. So it is in the film business. But truth of the matter is that if you're good at what you do, and particularly now, as you were saying, where you can make a movie and you go out and make something, it's going to get recognized. Good. People are going to like it. It's going to have a natural gravity that will pull people towards it. I think lots of times folks think, you know, I think it's really an excuse as to why I'm not successful. I made it myself loads of times. Do you know what I mean? And but then you have to decide what is success to you. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah,
think if you find a small number of people that dig what you do, and you get that out there and you've made it, that's success. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Do you make a ton of money out of it? I don't know. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But if you keep swinging at the ball, sooner or later you will. Do you know what I mean? Sooner or later you will. Like, just keep swinging at it. Don't give up. The only failure is if you give up. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's what you want to do, and it's a very tough business to be in, like the music business was as well. But if it's what you want to do, get out and fucking do it. Don't sit around and wait for people to tell you that. If you're an actor, find other actors, find up and coming directors, go on to Film Network Ireland or different places like that. Connect, get in shorts, get in things, go find an agent, get yourself a reel, get yourself some headshots. Do what you have to do and hustle, because ultimately it is not the most talented people that become successful. It is the most hardworking people that become successful. I would say I have a little bit of talent and I have an enormous amount of drive, and I will outwork another talented person. every single day of the week because, while they're fucking bitching and moaning about how it's not happening for them, I'm figuring a way to make it happen for me,
Yeah.
and that's what one of the great things about Lights Camera Action has been is that we essentially took the the ability to make movies and put it in our own hands. And we got people, given this 3-month acting course, which is wonderful, and they get to be part of a feature film, and just to be able to make movies. And then, myself and John have invested a great deal into these projects as well, personally and financially, to try and bring them to their kind of fruition. And I feel like they're going to, you know, like you don't know if they're going to make money. You don't know if they're going to, but they're going to be out there, and it's going to be an opportunity for those folks who are in the film, to say, well, I did this and I did that, and blah 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 blah. And not every movie that you make is going to be a hit. It just can't be. But I think if you keep swinging at it, sooner or later you're going to hit the ball. And how far it
Yeah,
goes.
yeah, and like that's the point that every guest on Made It Anyway has made, is that if you're not doing it, stop whinging about it. You
Yeah,
know, get out there, make it. Doesn't matter what it's like. The fact that you've made a feature film means that the guy beside you that's constantly going on about making one hasn't
yeah,
made one. You have. So you're one
absolutely.
step closer the whole time.
Yeah,
It's funny you talk about success. We were at the Galway Film Fleadh this year, and we had a meeting with an extremely well established screenwriter from Hollywood, and we were talking to him about a new movie that we're pitching at the minute and trying to get off the ground. And he was jealous of me that I could make movies for less than 50,000. And I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
why?
yeah,
I was like, but you're in the States, like it's so easy. He said, yeah, but when I pitch a movie to people and I want to direct it, I'm too expensive, is what I'm told. So
yeah,
it
yeah,
swings and roundabouts, isn't it? Yeah, you have that
yeah,
success, but it can be a hindrance, and there you have nothing to show
yeah,
when it's a hindrance.
yeah. Well, look, I mean, ultimately, for the last year or so, I haven't made a ton of money out of making these movies. Um, in fact, on the last one, I invested 17,000 euro of my own money into it to make it. Didn't take any salary out of it at all. But that's okay because I believe in what I'm doing, and I believe that it's going to get to where it is now. I'm doing other things in the film business to make a few bob, and I've got another few projects on the boil elsewhere, which are not indie movies. Well, they are indie movies, but they're with producers and kind of a studio and stuff like that, and that keeps you ticking over. But I think that I think I posted a thing. I seen a Sam Raimi clip the other day. It was great, and he was talking about what you're saying. You make the short, show it to people, ask them if they like it. If they didn't like it, what they didn't like, go back and reshoot it. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to just keep hustling and keep swinging at the ball and not giving up. And don't listen to other people who tell you you can't do it. George Bernard Shaw said, people who say it cannot be done should get out of the way if people are doing it already. It's one of my favorite phrases. And you're going to get a lot of mammies and daddies and brothers and sisters and friends who can't see themselves doing it, so they make fun of you for doing it, or some bullshit like that. Like, I just think, if you want to do something, then go out and do it, whatever it is in life. I mean, I come from Killinard, which is a council estate. I left school when I was 15. Um, I got no formal education. I was in the music business for years, and then I aged out of that, and then I was playing all the covers gigs in the world. And then I met Jim, and that put me on the path to financially being able to cover myself in the film business. But I had worked a long time, and had some things right, and then, as I said, had some other things wrong. The cliche days, But that's part of it too. Do you know what I mean? So, and what happens next year, I don't know. There's an opportunity or a couple opportunities I'm looking at next year. I'm hoping are going to come to fruition. You don't ever know if they're going to. Um, you're developing things all the time. They don't happen. They do happen. That's one of the things I love about Lights Camera Action, though, is that you're making a movie. It's low budget. It's 8 to 12 days. It's skeleton crew. There's no frills like on Recreation. It was fancy. It was great. We had hotel suites and drivers and all that kind of stuff. Steven Spielberg calling Jim on the phone, and we were in the car one day, and he was on speakerphone. It was really funny. It was surreal though, because I'm such a
Yeah.
Spielberg fan. But we don't have those frills on LCA, but that's okay. We're making movies, and we're having fun. Things are getting better, and they're getting gigs. This week I was in two folks. One of them's in a play. One of them got a commercial. One of them's been shortlisted for a commercial. Like, it's progress. Do you know what I mean? It's like pushing it forward. So
Yeah,
that feels really rewarding as well. I love that.
And that's the important thing, is that you're constantly doing something. You're looking for the next opportunity. And
Yeah.
like I have a film out to market for the last 2.5 years, maybe 3 years, I think. And it's like they're trying to finance it, but
Yeah.
you can't stop and just wait for that.
No.
You gotta keep going. You gotta keep moving.
Yeah.
Like myself, I do other things to keep the few pennies coming in and that. So what's coming up for David in the next year, next 2 years?
So I can talk about some of it. Some of it I can't talk about because I signed NDAs. But in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to be shooting this movie, this bunker movie, which I'm really excited about. It's a lights, camera, action movie, and it's about an alien invasion on Earth, and these folks have lived in a bunker for 10 years. And there's different factions in the bunker. There's like the admin section. There's the scientific section. There's this religious group that's sprung up called the Fallen, and then there's the engineering section. And the movie's very funny, and it's a fun movie. When you shoot the aliens, they blood glows and stuff like that. And essentially, they've been living in the bunker for 10 years. There's a murder that's happened. It starts with like a murder trial in the bunker, and then pretty soon we realize the aliens have invaded the bunker and they're down there, and people have to work out their differences or not to try and survive. So I'm really excited about that. I love horror movies. I love sci-fi movies. And the last movie I shot in November is called Seven Sins, which is a movie based in purgatory where people have to play games to get to heaven. It's like a Squid Game in purgatory kind of thing. And we shot that in Gormanstown Castle in 12 days. It looks amazing visually. I mean, you would not believe we had so little money. But this is one of the things I love about it. So it's like, okay, I got Gormanstown Castle, which is a great location, right? So then I'm like, okay, well, what are we going to do about this? Because we don't have a production designer, we don't have an art department, so we just leaned into light. So we decided we had 3 light sources. We had flashlight, candlelight, and then we'd moonlight, right? And then people would have visions of their past, and so then we could do really cool things with lights. We had one scene where there was a kid in a bed and found a steel bed, put it on a mattress, put lights underneath it, and lit it, and then this crazy green light, and so it kind of gives you an other world. It's like Billie Jean, the video on Billie Jean, which I'm ripping off that, and loads of different interesting creative ways to make it visually interesting without having the money. You know what I mean? And that I think sometimes when you got too much money, you know what I'm saying? It's just like,
You
and
lose a lot of that.
I went into Werner Herzog's set there. He was shooting a film here, and John Connors was on it. My friend Kathy Cherson was the locations manager. So I went in to just, hang out one day. And, he is just such a minimalist, and he just had Kate and Rooney Mara were the 2 stars. And he's such a minimalist. He's using not nearly all the crew that he had. And they've got different cameras on a tray set up with gimbals and different things like that. And he just shoots they're independent movies. That's what they are. And they're great looking movies. So I just think you take what you have and you make it into what's best. So that bunker movie we're shooting in a couple of weeks, I'm really excited about that. And then there's another movie that could happen, or 2 movies that could happen in the new year. I don't know if they're going for enough. Those are kind of more studio based and funder based. So again, your fate's in other hands. It's difficult because the funding bodies predominantly are not run by filmmakers. Predominantly are proliferated by people who are not creative people.
Yeah.
Predominantly, there are exceptions. That makes it difficult. But I think look, if you want to make a movie like we've been talking about, go out and make your movie.
Yeah, no, that's it. You'll find a way if you really want to. You'll definitely
100%.
find a way.
Yeah, 100%.
Great having you on the show, and I'm glad to say you're definitely a filmmaker and not a film talker. We don't want film talkers, we want filmmakers on this show.
I seen that,
Um,
yeah.
Look, great having you on board, and thanks for your time, and
Cheers,
best
Park.
of luck with the rest of
Enjoyed it.
your projects coming up.
Thanks,
And
man.
actually, if you have any advice, fire it out there now. I'll give you 5 seconds to give one golden nugget.
I would say, I would go back to what I've been saying from the beginning. If you want to do it, do it. Don't talk about doing it. Most people, that's saying, most men live quiet lives of desperation and go off to the grave with a song in their heart. If you have a song, fucking sing it. What's the worst thing that can happen? Do you know what I mean? Just if you believe that you're a writer or an actor or a director or producer or cinematographer, whatever it is, get out and do the fucking thing. Nobody's gonna hand it to you. Do you know what I mean? And what's the worst thing that can happen? You know, it turns out you're not. Okay, well maybe you're not, but how would you know? Just get out and try. You know what I mean? That's what I would say. I'd rather do that than punch a ticket somewhere and be miserable doing something I don't love. I'm lucky. I love what I do, and I get to get up every day and do that, and that's a gift. And I think it's a gift I wish more people had. Most people do things they don't want to do. So I guess it's a question you have to ask yourself. Do you want to go off to the grave with a song in your heart, or do you want to let the world hear it, man?
True, true, too true, man. Dave, thanks a million.
Cheers, Park. Thanks, man.